You see, there was a program the other day on television talking about, how much the Earth's magnetic field has moved, over the years and over the hundreds of years, and how much it's moved. When you actually look at the point of this Dalton site with a point on it, it's not far off the north. If you look at the north on this map, at least, however Google's got north, when you see the arrow changing, I mean, it's not like nowhere near. It's hardly facing the other direction. I mean, it's definitely not facing the completely other direction. It's if we put if we put the site facing straight up there, north is then there. I mean, it's not even a quarter of a turn off. I mean, if it was wrong by a quarter of a turn, it would be there. So, I mean, it's in the right area. It's just, maybe, less than 45. If you have, I'm just trying to think, 45 degrees, isn't it? 45 degrees is half of the quarter, but it's less than that. So, I mean, it's only about 40 degrees off. So, and it could have even been, it's been quarried out and so forth. So it could have even been, that point shape could have even been further around. But it's absolutely within about 40 degrees. And 40 degrees, to say that it's a pointy thing, that is not far out at all, is it? It's not nowhere near. It's not insignificant. It's once you start trying to say, oh, well, which direction's north, and you get within a certain accuracy, that's significant. And the fact that it's in this, what gets me the most, this whole Dalton Bank situation. The whole Dalton Bank. So these two, so we've got this kind of like arc-shaped sort of, the whole sort of structure of it is kind of like arc shape, and then we've got this other one that's bigger on one side, which is this kind of comes up to the point there. But together, they're definitely like, it's got a general shape to it. I mean, it's nowhere near perfect, but the entrance to this valley is very, very extremely similar layout, just like a huge version of the shape of these court entrances, like you've got on Bellasnap or Stony Littleton and so forth, or even the ramp shape of Newgrange. But all those, you see, the thing with all of those ancient sites and buildings is they're never 100% perfect inside. They're roughly shaped. They're very, very well built and structured, but then the light shines through the chamber and all these, all this other features, but they're kind of they're not perfectly symmetrical, so symmetry wasn't that as important. Not like some of the Mediterranean ones, which are more sort of well built, although the Earth could have moved around and so forth. But the general shape, and in fact, the cut of this bank here that goes down there is, that line goes straight north anyway. The significance of the river going past the entrance to it, and the view from that Dalton Bank is also amazing as well. And the fact that it's flat. There must have been something going on here. This entrance part here, which is where they had the Yorkshire Show. Now, the other significant thing is that when they put this Imperial Chemicals factory here, ICI, it goes over the river. It blocks off and concretes the river, and the whole complex completely spoils the entrance. It's almost like when you block them up, when they get sealed, in a way, sealed or blocked up. I think that the wider landscape around this is more symbolically important, as much as the actual site. And I think that if we consider the scale of it then to, like, Henbury Cross, when it's like a big dragon shape, which is actually quite similar, although this would be the opposite to that. The big dragon shape and the head with the hill fort on the end of it is much more like a dragon, or like the male phallic, where this is more female with the little monument inside it. But this entrance bit on here that you would kind of look at here would be almost like the female part at the entrance to the female that would make the entire landscape here. If we can actually come to the conclusion that this, well, there's no doubt that this site is not linked to the other when it's 2.5 kilometres away, just like Battlesbury, Scratchbury, Worthing, it's just a no-brainer. And the fact that the entrance to the valley is like a court temple shape, that changes the whole thing, because the thing is with Bellasnap and Stony Littleton, they're religious sites. The Long Barrows are religious sites, and I don't know how they can even get the archaeologist permission to dig them out, a lot of them, particularly what happened to the Irish ones, when the bones got strewn out. I mean, that's against UN religious site protection. I don't know how these universities do it even in the name of science, and so forth, anymore. They just want to dig into it. And I believe that all the techniques and all the values they've got to disrupt and damage them, they've been exaggerated, and they've actually encouraged the students and the professors and so forth to dig it up and destroy it, trash it, just like in the war with Sisbury Ring Hill Fort, when they went and ragged the tanks all over it. I really think that it's like with the food. They lied to us about the food, the milk, everything. We need to be having raw milk, drinking raw milk, and we need to be eating greens. And what the perversion of the food industry really is similar to the perversion of archaeology. I know the archaeologists like to dig things up and get things out of the ground, but the thing with religious sites is, why dig it up? I mean, we've got graveyards now. Why dig it up? Why do we not test them now? Do tests on them, so forth. You bury it to preserve it, or to leave it be for monumental purposes, for a memory, or just out of respect. And that's why they meant to have religious site protection, like for Taj Mahal and for, the sites of Mecca and things like that, and, Petra. all these sites. The archaeologists. The thing is with the archaeology, it's a science. Archaeology is a study, and it comes from the universities. But archaeology itself is not religion. Now, it's true that Oxford University evolved out of a monastery and so forth, but then split off to Cambridge. But it doesn't seem to practice necessarily religion anymore in the separate fields of study. Psychologists aren't priests, but chemists aren't priests, engineers aren't priests. Sure, it originated from a monastery, but it certainly isn't the church. Regardless of the courts having these, royal courts of justice proposes that it's some sort of religious form. And, even when you submit to Parliament, petition the Lords should be sent with a prayer. This is it. When you get on, once you get onto the Long Barrows, you definitely are on religious sites. And West Kennet, even though some of them are restored and so forth to an extent, like Arthur's tomb is, a lot of these dolmens are just the shells. It's no one is actually calling people out on religious site protection anymore. I'm calling them out on this because this is most definitely not coincidental that they've got this ancient site here, and this. When you look at this entrance and see the views for it and go up into this Dalton Bank, it's absolutely amazing. This, in fact, therefore, is bigger on scale than Henbury Cross, which that Henbury Cross itself stands out in the landscape very much so from zooming out. And I believe that if you look at Maiden Castle then is dwarfed. Maiden Castle is dwarfed by this. And that would then make the whole difference. Not that the Pennine Hills themselves are that significant, but we've got an established site here. And then the fact that the thing with Armonbury, the thing with Castle Hill here, which definitely looks like a long barrow from the side, there's no doubt about that. The thing with Castle Hill is that its position is pointing in from the side towards it. It points exactly towards the other site from the side. So it's almost like it's naturally got an affinity to search it out. Just like when you get a compass and it settles. You see, in those old acts of law, even in treason and so forth, it's an offence to imagine and compass the king's death. But they use the words compass, like if you put like a magnetised piece of metal floating in water, it naturally seeks out the north. Well, this surely, in the prehistoric times, this have got to have aligned with north at one point. It'll have passed through at some point and been significant, and possibly even here as well, almost notices a change over a long period of time. You see, these sites are all about magnetism and the lay of things and the flow in and around. There's certain flows you can feel in buildings, whether they're elongated like in churches, the whole design of it. The word compass and the powers of the compass. It's to say that, the whole science of these sites is based on a prehistoric culture and then someone comes over and just rubbishes it is absolutely blasphemous. It is, and then they've got all these modern churches and so forth with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and then they're knocking up this, 1066. It's illegal to imagine and compass the king or whatever, the king's death. But yeah, it's all God save the king. But yet, then again, it's almost like, not even to. If it's legal to compass the king, then you wouldn't even be able to find out what the king was, really, because in order to, you'd have to know who it was, if there even was one. Back in these times, there were many in different areas. There's no doubt once you start getting into ancient sites, and when we're on to Bellasnap and Stony Littleton and Nof and Dof, we're interested in court tomb shape entrances. And if this there's a site here, it seems interesting. Yes, well, it's a mound, more like a hill fort, possibly even like Silbury Hill. Well, just a minute, there's Silbury Hill not far off from West Kennet Longbarrow. Hey, just a minute, the entrance to the Hill Valley looks like a massive court tomb shape, and they're really into that. Do they have anything on that scale though? It's a bit big though. I mean, I thought Hill Fort was big. I mean, this is smaller than Old Oswestry, but now you're taking a bit of a pee-pee if you're going to go that big. Well, I don't know. You say, no, it's not as big as Wynn Castle. That's really going big, large scale. And you think, well, actually, take this into account. The Wynn Castle isn't that big at all, really, is it? I need to get this scale of zoom, and we need to go into. I'll get it to just where it goes to the 2 and just to the 2. Just touches the 2 there. Just fits in the screen. And I'll take a screenshot of it. So it's at 2,000 feet. So I'll keep it that direction anyway. And we'll go down to... Whoop, that was quick. Oh, here we go. You can see, well, you can definitely see Maiden Castle. It's not let me get that little bar to the 2,000 feet mark. Keeps moving. Oh, that's it. That's just touching the 2,000 feet. That doesn't look... That looks... That doesn't look right from that other picture. I'll screenshot it anyway. See, look at Dorchester. Why does it do that? Look how Dorchester, they've just not gone overboard. You see, it's funny because the coastline is like that, a bit like that court shape as well there when you get to that Preston place. Okay, we'll go over to... Can we see... Can you usually see it? There we go. There we are. You see, this is not exactly symmetrical. It's kind of rough shape, but it definitely is significant. The length of this one is amazing. I mean, that'd go straight in. That if this was a male part, it would probably just go in the right probably amount to get to that 1 hour by us. If it was like going to enter it, wouldn't it? Symbolically. So we'll get it to the 2000. Get us nice little. Try and get both sides. You see, it's not on. You see, one of them there's more like. It does look like spread wings, but. That's at 2,000 feet. Right, so I'll just show you now. This is like at the same kind of scale. So here you see, this is the entrance of this sort of what we've defined as a court sort of tomb shape. And then where the love heart there is where the little Dalton jewel gem is. If that were, if you could imagine that as kind of being, if it was like, you know, like West Kennet or Stony Littleton or Nof or Dof, the position of where the love heart is, the mound that's in the valley, is actually where kind of like the inner chamber would be, right? Now, if you look at Maiden Castle here, it's actually, compared to the whole this massive landscape of this court tomb entrance, Maiden Castle is very, very small. It's like the biggest hill fort on one complex with like waves around it. But as for these big and to the right hand side of the entrance on this, that area there is very, very flat and an amazing view on there. You would have had like that as a vantage point back in the prehistoric times. Plus, you can see across the whole area over to the Pennines. So it actually, as an entire kind of like site within a site, it's like the land itself is part of the site. Then you're looking at it, the whole thing dwarfs Maiden Castle. But then we've got, if you look at the same, it's supposed to be the same zoom. Then we've got Henbury Cross, which is the most ridiculous name ever. If there was a Henbury Cross, it's like George and the Dragon. That is very, very male because it's like a dragon with spread out wings. And the hill fort is actually on the dragon's head, of all places, which would have looked pretty cool at night time with fires on it. Now that landscape is itself immense, and with the length of the dragon's head, or if you want to call it a snake's head, and the wings out, that is then kind of like, probably all in all, the whole size of it, bigger than this. Although spread out. And then, but the head part and the neck part of the dragon with you see the little site on their head, the little hill fort on their head is therefore, that's the place where it all happened, you know, where everyone was living or whatsoever, you know, if it's like a hill fort. But then the majesty of the landscape around it is very, very symbolic. Whereas with Maiden Castle, you've got a very, very, very large area to live on there, but there's not anything other so much symbolic as it nearly being next to the ocean. but it does have that shape at the ocean. So the kind of curve. So I think that this is relevant. The whole science of those long barrows and chambers, it's all about either the light coming through or the light shining in, or something to do with some forces or other forces or flow of forces. You know, like when you've got certain, you know, if you're in like a long room and the energy flows through a room a certain way, which is what the whole basis of the churches is meant to be based on. And then with this one here, the site is so close to north that it's only about within, you know, it's 40 degrees off, which isn't, you know, it's not pointing the other way. And it's not even 90 degrees off. It's not even a quarter of a turn off. It's well within. And if it's been moving around, particularly over the last, you know, X thousand years, you know, or hundreds of thousands of years, it could have been facing north at one point when it was occupied. But we'll have to ask the scientists that. And the fact that the other site's so close to it, these sites are relevant. But obviously, when you get to here, there are sites all over the place down here. This part of the country is the densest concentration of them, unless they've all been mowed out with fields and we can't find them all up north, more so. But it really flips it then, because what it's doing is it's saying only focus on the size of the actual hill fort itself, not in its symbolic landscape. Once you bring the symbolic landscape into it and it's got a shape and form and it means something, then you're like, boom, whoa, that's big, right? But Midden Castle, Midden Castle's huge, Midden Castle's huge. Yeah, well, Midden Castle itself is huge, but it's not necessarily got anything. You see, the thing with Midden Castle is these big walls around the edge of it. You know, these when you're there, they're absolutely huge oscillations up and down in earth, like at Old Oswestry, but Midden Castle even more so. The immensity of it with the waves, but then when you go out to sea, the vastness of the water, the immenseness of the ocean, the depth of the ocean boggles the mind. And then if it's a storm, the waves are so treacherous. Obviously, being next to the ocean, though, people can come over from overseas, although, you know, the ocean does protect us somewhat, gives large protection. Then you think of the walls of the hill fort gives protection. How could we be invaded, you know, being on an island like this, you know, with the immense ocean, the depth of the ocean, and then the immense... This is right next to the ocean, so it needs to be protected. Although here we have... This is not too far from the ocean, but this is visible from... You know about it. You know, symbolically, though, it is magnificent. I mean, I know the whole island of Italy itself is meant to be mountainous, like it's one big spine of mountains all the way down Italy. You could say that's a big, you know, snake representation, like, you know, the Romans had on the top of their helmets charging forward, the big metal plume. But then again, Italy's dwarfed by the Alps, you know, so it's always like this one-upmanship thing. But for something beautiful, you know, it definitely is. You know, if you want to look into mythology and, you know, if you're finding dinosaur bones and they kind of like, you know, had some awareness of that, finding animals, which there will be a lot more fossils back then around than there is now. Just the idea of it, the romance of it, the you know, we have, you know, Arthur Pendragon. It's got to be relevant significantly, and the fact that the south of the island, you know, from Midden Castle to here at least, is so dense in these sites, and you've got a lot near each other, like particularly at Worthing and big sites at Worthing, like getting towards this size, and then at Warminster. The thing with this, though, is that it's so... You see, you don't think... Because ours are just quite smallish mounds, you don't really think anything to them. But the thing with Silbury Hill, like, what is Silbury Hill? It's just a man-made mound, but it's next to a long barrow. And it doesn't matter whether what time before the other one was. It's the long barrow is the religious aspect, and Silbury Hill's not a hill fort, but it's symbolic to something. This is the thing. So here we have definitely a mound and definitely big enough to live on. What was going on it? We don't have any evidence of. They don't call it a hill fort mainly because it's not got walls around it. But when the sides are so steep, why do you need them around it? And then you've got the Pennine shielding you. It's right in the middle of the country. It's where the hills and mountains start, and it's downstream to the ocean. It's in a perfect place to get to all of the country. And then you've got these long barrows and mounds which are more towards the coast, if not around the coast, so more towards the coast. Except Atherstone is not the coast, but there are a lot more of them. Pegler's Tough, you can see the sea from there when you're on that ridge. I mean, they are generally more coastal. And then when you think of Newgrange and Nowfendorf on the bend of the river, when you look at it, it's almost like exactly like where the Humber is, the layout of it between here and the Humber. So it's just also the thing with that Nowfendorf, that there's 3 very, very large structures at Nowfendorf on the bend of a river. And one of them has got loads and loads of little tiny ones around it, and it's almost like feminine symbolism with the entrances and the small kids around them, and they're staying close together, right? With this one, and the thing is, they're more nearer to the entrance of the river on the whole shape of the whole island of Ireland. Yet these ones, we've got these 3 elongated hill forts where you're on the outside of them, but they're all in sort of a formation. There's the one at Meltham, then Castle Hill, and this one. They're all spread out, and they're all phallic shaped. But then you get this entrance here, which is court tomb shaped. It's not like, oh, that's a coincidence. All of these sites are either male or female shaped. So we've got. You can't deny that, the hill fort's right on the head of the dragon, which is, if you want to call it snake or dragon, it's phallic shaped. They like that. And the whole part of the landscape is part of it, symbolic. Maiden Castle, definitely more for the ocean and being next to the ocean, and the immense waves of it. More of a up and down sculptured. Here, they found this place and it was like, wow, this is great. There's this natural. We don't know what this was like. We don't know if someone's dug it out, if it had sides on it which were more like oswestry or what, because we don't know what happened with the Romans. We don't know if they told us a full story or whether it got dug out somewhat or what it was exactly like. But we know that there was a river coming down here, and the river flowed and joined onto the other river. See, that's the thing with Bristol. The thing with Bristol is that the entire river is magic and mystical. It is a hill with a river going through it, and you've got the cliff sides, and it joins onto the sea, and it's just got a absolute, complete and total magical vibe and feel to it. That's the thing with it. And up Castle Hill here, you can feel the winds blow, obviously when the compass can feel the magnetic pull of the compass turning it towards north. When you stood on Castle Hill, you can feel the winds blowing. And there is something in that. So the whole thing with the compass is laughable now. I was just reading that Treason Act, treason against the king or the realm. What is treason against the realm is against the people. And then we're looking at the whole food industry and the chemicals, which, blocking up the entrance to the ancient valley is got to be blasphemous in some way. If anyone's god were these gods that these people worshipped, well, or maybe just the male and celebrating the male and female, you know. It's a long, long way from Africa or wherever we're going to say that it all started from. But I mean, there was some culture spreading all the way up Spain through France. You know, we've got all these cairns. I mean, I don't have to go into all the details because there are a million programs to watch. I'm going to tag Howard Crowhurst because he's actually just started. He's got his own YouTube channel now, and he's just started tagging it. And I probably could do with him. I won't mind sending him my document actually that I've done, because I like Howard Crowhurst videos. I think they're amazing. And there was some upsetting story to do with those Karnak stones. Some of them got a DIY store built on them, which is kind of upsetting. So I guess I might actually, it'd be pretty cool if he listens to this video. But I'm not in the best, most detailed frame of mind recently. But I've just been watching and listening rather than speaking. But we need something doing. This is religious because this is religious. We're looking at long barrows which have a particular shape about them, particularly in Ireland and, you know, in the south of England. There are a lot of them around the coast, Scotland, so forth. They tend to be more coastal, although we don't know how many exactly were in the middle of the country, but there don't seem to be many here, right in the centre. They seem to be more around the fringes, unless they've all been mowed by farming and we can't find any in the centre. But the long barrows, we don't know how many were destroyed by the Romans. You know, they've got some Anglesey sites like Brinsley-de-Doux and so forth. But this is absolutely not coincidental. This is symbolically chosen because the landscape here forms a court shape. And so far in, at the exact distance where if it was a scale of any of the small, tiny ones, it would be where the chamber is, but there's a mound in a valley, and also the entrances to these are majestic views and so forth. And then we've got the other site, which is very, very long barrowed shaped, and then there's a third one, and they're all kind of spaced out far apart and phallic shaped, like men go out hunting into the environment and spread out, go searching. Here is where the water all gathers in the Pennines and forms into streams and then goes to the river, which is, you know, where you follow to go to the sea. 3 elongated sites. And then you've got in Ireland, in the exact same ley line across, if you go across to Ireland, you've got, this is right at the centre of the island where the river starts. The Newgrange ones are on a bend of a river, literally not, I mean, you can't say that it's by the sea, but on the scale of where the river starts in the bogs and then finishes up at the ocean, it's very, very close to the entrance of the river on the scale of the whole shape of the island. And the thing is that Ireland is more round, and you could say it's like more like a feminine, and then you could say England is masculine and long, you know. This is a ancient religious site, and therefore it should fall under religious site protection. In fact, if this isn't more protected than it's older, the older they are, the ancient sites, the more protected they should be. So it should be more protected than the Taj Mahal and then the Mecca, because these are pre-BC. So it should be protected. As soon as you bring that court shape, a long barrow into it, it's religious. So, and the fact that it's aligned with I mean, it's 40 degrees off north, right? And they're saying now that the polarity of the planet changes over time. So if it wasn't aligning with north at some point, then, you know, it must have been. And that's all to do with, that was the religion back then, you know, these mysterious forces that they were discovering, or the learned people knew about. The stone outside Newgrange, you know, is if it's authentic, it's got many things to do with the Riemann's hypothesis on it, because you can't have nothing without something. You can't have a 0 point. You see, once you have a point that's measurable, you've got something and you haven't got nothing. So trying to find those divisible, calculatable things that are minus only. Once you've got something and you take it away and you've got nothing, right? You can't take away anything when there's nothing to take away. It's imaginary. It's hypothetical. I know that you've got antimatter and so forth, but I mean, really, if there's nothing, we can't. You can't calculate nothing when you've got something. This is the thing with scientists. If someone is present, you ain't got nothing, because you can't measure nothing when you've got something there. The existence of the instrument defies its ability to measure nothing by the existence of something, you know. And I know that scientists are going into some really complicated antimatter and, you know, other types of theories and so forth. And now Brian Cox is even saying the universe has expanded not just one Big Bang, but multiple times. So, I mean, they're even writing themselves off now, these scientists. The thing is, they teach these things in the school. It's what the entire education system's built on. And now you've got Mark Zuckerberg banning people for saying something about a virus or whatever, when we've been taught, oh, there's only one Big Bang all through the schools. The thing with these stiffs, I call them stiffs like Zuckerberg, is you bend them and they break, you know. Oh, you don't abide by my rules and you're kicking you off my platform, you know. But yeah, you got, you know, Brian Cox and co. The last theory of mankind that we taught in the schools, we'll have to burn the books now on the bonfire like Guy Fawkes, you know. This is the thing with stiffs, they don't bend. And there's all this panic about misinformation going on the internet at the moment. You know, people freaking out. You can't say this or that. It's just all hype. It's the hype. And then you've got all these. I wanted to do a video about, you know, because they're going about, what is a man or woman to do with sex. Many people don't even understand themselves. There's so many outside influences on psychology and hormones, and then what even is, the idea of what it is. You can't say, I've got, female genitalia, but I've got a man's mind, because we don't really know at the end of the day. Well, you can't say a mind is this or that, no matter how you feel about something or what you think about something, you know. And the brain is so it's got plasticity. I really think that we should judge the female. I think that they've already, all the problems that we talk about now and all the philosophies, all the opinions, it's all the amount of times we've sat around these campfires and talked about things, and in ancient Greece and so forth with Pythagoras. All these things have been through, and now we've got these distractions of the devices and so forth. It's just going through it again, but we're all idiots. I mean, we're being distracted by performance theatre. The ancients were so attuned with each other and knowledgeable about each other that they regarded and studied and even made their houses, their temples out of the male and female form, right? And then there were these different forces they knew about, like, gravity and magnetism and so forth. They understood them. And even, having, females are more tendency to go here or there and so forth, and males are more tendency to do this, but they knew that that's just a tendency. You can have a variation in it. Nothing's exactly, symmetrical unless it's, Giant's Causeway. Even apples aren't 100% spherical. I think the news really is it's hype. And I've just been watching a program that the percentage of people that are, fall within this category of, uncertainty on gender is so small but yet the police have reformulated entire forms on it on the internet. All these forms on the internet, gender reassignment forms, on this gender and all this, I don't know why the police are doing it. It's actually criminal that the police are doing it. It affects such a small amount of people that to change the forms for everyone is actually messing with people's heads. It is actually, there's something wrong with the police and the government. There are forms and shapes that we identify with. Now, if the person or the character is more feminine, there's actually nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with femininity. Femininity is like, being, more social, caring, hugging, loving, nurturing, so forth. But then you get women who are very clearly women. They've got definitely, they are born women and they're women in their heads. They're attracted to men, but they might actually like, sports, rugby. There are many, many women who like sports or hunting, more male things, who definitely are attracted to males. The female's a woman, and so forth. And on that basis, a lot of the media at the moment, they don't really actually know what they're talking about, and they don't actually understand it. And what they're actually doing is they're actually just raving, and it's hype. It's hype for the sake of it. Like, oh no, there's a new car. Let's get the cameras and take photos of it, talk about it, have hype about it. It's so negligible number that the fact that they're making it into a big deal is almost kind of like, paedophiles and so forth, and now we've ended up gates around schools. In fact, the gates around schools is so ridiculously unwanted and unneeded, and in fact, it's insulting to the people of this country who've evolved from these cultures that it's almost like fences around schools is the reaction that the newspapers are doing with talking about the gender thing. It's so overly implemented that it's actually, there's something wrong going on. Something we're meant to be evolving, and now we can communicate more, talk more. But what's happened is it's not actually made things better. It's made things worse. And also, we actually had women, queens. Women weren't banned from being kings or queens back in the Celtic times. We had like Queen Catamandua, right? So all this hype up, women can't vote, and then we had the old suffragettes and so forth. That's more, come from Roman times onwards. The Celts, all these sites here, which were these temples that they had, were very, very, very shaped in. If it was a male culture that we had in those ancient times, and they didn't regard females very highly, why would you got Pegler's Tuft? And why have you got, Newgrange and Noth and Doth? Because they're all feminine shaped, right? And they're very, very important. But you've also got male phallic shaped sites. So, they were regarded equally. And we had kings and queens back then. No one said only the man can be king. And very little was written down about them. So we can't actually state either way. I would suggest that the whole thing for, men only voting is actually just a periodic thing that we went through over a certain time, following Romans and conquest and so forth. I mean, it's amazing that actually we've even had any queens in this country. I mean, we had Caesars, but most of the Caesars male. In fact, I don't know a female Caesar off the top of my head. In fact, that's one thing that I've never thought of before. I can't think of a woman Caesar off the top of my head, because all the Caesars that I've learned about and seen in movies are male. The only woman I can think of in my head is Cleopatra, who was Egyptian. And the Egyptians had these ancient sites like the Sphinx, which you're getting close to the shape of. You're getting into this sort of stuff with, you know, the Sphinx and the layout of it, and then all those early Mediterranean temples and so forth. Seems to be more like something that popped up, you know, from Romans and the Arthurian period. Although, you know, you could have queens. But as for the voting, you know, you'll have to ask someone who studied ancient Rome. But as far as I know off the top of my head, they definitely didn't have queens, did they? So there's something going on there. I think the whole thing with women not voting is just kind of like a figment. It's a period. It's a period we've been through. And unfortunately, we're going through a period now where the governments have encouraged movement around Europe, and we weren't quite prepared for this crime increase, and the elite class have taken so much for themselves, like what Noam Chomsky is saying, that they've caused a lot of the crime by withholding all the money. I mean, who are these 3% who have got all this money? Who do they think they are? It's just so preposterous. And now I've been going on for far too long. But I need to get United Nations ancient site protection on this.